let's get caught up with Jacob. And Jacob, you brought it up. The world's getting in a really dark place. And to me, there's nothing more evidential at the fact that we're living in really strange times when you have the whole world goes into this rainbow flag for a whole month. The month of June is dedicated to pride, which is a whole level in of itself in terms of biblical understanding of what pride is. But it goes into pride, and not only just them parading and telling you how LGBTQ this, LGBTQ that. They now expanded it to 2S, LGBTQIA+. But now they got into the retail stores. And the big backlash, of course, is what retail stores and clothing stores are doing for kids. And I wasn't here last week, so I don't know exactly how much you guys discussed this, but the backlash and boycott of companies like Target here in America, North Face, which is a global brand, that have gone into literally making LGBTQ pride clothing for kids, bathing suits for kids, targeting kids, joining with satanic groups to enlarge their what they offer to kids. This has gone too far in some parents' minds, and some even conservatives, even some liberals. It's gone too far. But we've seen the backlash against Bud Light, but the transgenderism, we've seen the backlash against Target now. Other companies who want to go down this road are doing it. Jacob, I've never asked you this, but what is your take on, just from the economic perspective, we'll get to the spiritual perspective in a moment, but just from the economic perspective, why do companies go down this road where you see the majority of customers don't want it? Even people that are not Christians have told me, I don't want this for my kids. I don't want to see this for my kids. Yet I go into Target, I go into this website, and nothing that I see is but rainbows and clothing for my kids that I don't want them to see. What is your take?
First of all, we have to understand that the world is in the power of the wicked one, and there is a satanic power on back of this agenda. This world is Satan's kingdom. Jesus said so. So first of all, we have to take that into perspective. It's what theologians call the hermatosphere. Now, in terms of the way it practically plays out economically, politically, and so forth, we have to understand that homosexuals are people who are misguided. But many of them are highly talented people, creative people. They are people who often excel in the humanities. They excel in entertainment and other things of this nature. There is a disproportionately large amount of homosexual presence in fields like design, among several others. That will obviously be true of the media as well, but it's certainly true of the field of design. So when you have people who are that is going to be one of the results. Now, again, I simply recognize the fact that there are a lot of talented homosexuals, a lot, and their sexual orientation is their personal business, irrespective of the fact I disagree with homosexuality on both scientific and biblical grounds. But to pursue an agenda, getting themselves in those positions to push that agenda, well, that's what you see happening. That's what you see happening. They are kingpins in the world of design. That is another reason. Also, the centers that control media, Silicon Valley being one, Hollywood being another, again, you have a hyper concentration of homosexuals in those places and a homosexual influence. So even though much of mainstream America is not in accord with it, the people who push the buttons of mass communications are in the position to push the buttons that they want. So much media comes out of Madison Avenue, so much of it comes out of Covent Garden in London, so much of it comes out of Hollywood, so much it comes out of Silicon Valley. That is what is happening. And also the mainstream media, the Don Lemons, the Anderson Cooper, people like this, they flaunt this agenda that they have. Rachel Maddow is another one. So you see it also a presence in the media, mainstream media. When you get the people in the positions, they think that they can reconstruct the mainstream without reference to the rank and file. They think they can reconstruct the mainstream without reference to the rank and file. Now, this is something that is basically true. I have to be careful how I word this. Simon Wiesenthal said no more than 15% of the German people at most were Nazis, ideologically Nazis, no more than 15%. But that's all it took to dissuade an entire nation of Germans to follow Hitler. Well, probably well under 15%, under 10% of people are homosexuals and lesbians. But if they get in the right positions under the right circumstances, they can persuade a whole mainstream. And that is the same principle that is happening. They are forcing their agenda on other people and reconstructing a mainstream that is not representative of the actual mainstream, but it's representative of them.
Very true. And you see that with all these different companies coming out, especially for Pride Month. David, I mean, it's one thing that they bring out their clothing, but it's another thing when they target kids. It's another bizarre thing when they do it for animals. I mean, you got PetSmart, Petco. I mean, it is no longer about fashion. It's really about smearing that lifestyle and those beliefs in people's faces. They know it's not popular, but they double down on it. These companies donate to GSELN, I think it's GSLEN, which is the World Economic Forum, organization per se. And they do this. They do 200,000 from PetSmart, Target, all these companies. What do you think about that?
Okay. Well, one, when we see that these groups are pushing this, and if it goes down to where it's pets and everything, we know that people that buy clothes for their pets, they're who they're marketing to. They're marketing to people of this group and those people that are, of course, supporting these groups. And so we have to make sure that we don't support these groups and these organizations. We know that government has failed us, but there's something that seems to be happening that's really good, is making sure that we use our supporting dollars, our commerce, with other companies that don't support this, these agendas. And there's a lot out there. There's Public Square you can look at, where
Yes.
a lot of companies are American companies and they don't support these agendas. So that's one good direct way. And we've got even one of my favorite companies that for a long time was Chick-fil-A. Well, Chick-fil-A has now had some problems in there. They've hired a DEI specialist to make sure that they're adhering to these principles that are found in the Pride movement. Well, I'm not going back to Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A, if you remember, Christians supported them when the libs attacked them. Well, they're really risking a lot. It's one thing when you don't start buying beer, but if you've got Christians as one of your main components of support, and you doing things that don't agree with, they could have a mighty fall that would make Budweiser and Target's fall look something like just a bubble. Because can you imagine if 60, 70, 80% of their customers just walked away?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't take long.
Yeah.
And I hate to see good Christians lose their jobs and things like that are working there. And these people that have bought these franchises because a few of the idiots at the top have decided that they need to become politically active. Of course, we know they're going in to get funding to operate their corporation, borrowing money from places like BlackRock and from Vanguard and some other funds, which says you have to have these political scores to be able for us to be able to fund you.
Yes.
So they're like, they need to say no, but look, it's Christians should make sure, look, I've never been a boycott guy, but you don't have to boycott. All you have to do is just put your money in another place. You know, use your money. And if a lot of us do it, it's going to affect them. And they'll either wake up or go under. You
Yeah.
know, and now you got Kohl's, they've already started falling.
Yeah.
Target is now down over 10 billion. And even though the stock market is up today, they're still going the other way, which
Yeah. But
Target was 12.75 billion
billion.
loss, 12.75 billion loss and climbing.
Yeah, and that was very quick, Jacob. I mean, it hasn't been that long. Davey, you have comments about Target and their ties with some of these infamous groups?
Yeah, while we were just on losses, I think it was about 2 days ago, the last figure I saw with Anheuser, Bud Light, 27 billion loss.
Woo.
So look, the boycotts work, yeah. But it's not just the people, we need to not just boycott shopping there. Look, if you've got shares in these companies too, you need to pull your shares out because a lot of these companies are being pressured into it through things like the World Economic Forum. Look, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they own so much as it is. And they're pressuring these companies, they're pressuring these CEOs into pushing the agenda that they want. And we've all heard Larry Fink say they're about forcing ideas, they're about forcing the agenda. And this is basically how they're doing it. So a lot of these companies are going along with this because they're getting the pressure on them. From these companies to push this. So, and their bonuses and stuff like that are threatened. So look, we need to pull our shares out of this sort of stuff too. Look, Disney shares have dropped like 33% too in recent times too. So it does work. We need to vote with our dollar. Look, we go somewhere else. We go somewhere where we're not pushing this stuff. We got shares and we take them out. We got to fight fire with fire here.
Can I ask Marco, would you mind if I ask Jacob a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jacob, I seen a small article. I don't think you've seen it, but it seems the LBG, the lesbian and bi and gays, want to divorce themselves from the trans Q plus because they say, look, we're not groomers. We don't want your children. We don't want to be bothering those because they now see them as something different from their own movement. What would you say about this? What do you think about that?
Okay, before I was a Christian, I had a lot of homosexual and lesbian friends. And even then, I'm talking now more than 40 years ago, there was a schism between transvestites, cross-dresser transvestites, and conventional homosexuals said they were gays. They'd say, I am a gay man. That's what they would say, as opposed to the transvestites who were seen as men who wanted to be women. There was always that schism anyway. But now you have other things that have come into play. One of which is you have people like Peter Thiel, Donald Trump's promotion of the so-called gay Republicans, which Trump promotes, which Bush and Cheney promoted, the Bush's wife certainly, and Dick Cheney. They want to integrate homosexuality and lesbianism into the social mainstream and not to be seen as anything inordinate or unusual. They want that acceptance. And there is afraid that politically, by identifying with these radical transgender types or these people going into the schools promoting this among children, that it will inhibit their own agenda of making homosexuality and lesbianism simply seen as social mainstream and a natural orientation. So that is what is happening.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, we'll go to Davey real quick. Davey, were you done? And then we'll go to Jay.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's okay. Okay, yep.
Okay.
One thing will bring up, I was just reminded by someone on the chat that even the pride flag was being flown on the set of The Chosen.
Really?
And then when they were confronted about it too, they just said, "Oh, we need to be inclusive," that sort of stuff. They came back with pretty much the lame woke answer that you would kind of expect.
The lame woke. Oh boy, now it's touched. I mean,
I
it
wish
has
I
touched
could.
the
I
church.
wish I could boycott The Chosen, but I never watched it in the first place.
Yeah. You watch it for 1 minute and then boycott that. Jay, what do you got?
So forgive me, I'm gonna try to use some logic here, and let's see if
That's not
we get
allowed
complaints.
in this constitutional democracy. We can't allow logic.
I know, but every state in the United States and in the world, for that matter, they have an age of consent. So why do we allow corporations, media, to give highly sexualized lifestyle choices to people who cannot give consent? The MPAA, their whole reason of existing is to rate material and say, this is for general audience, this is for audiences with parental guidance at above 13, this is for, restricted to just adults. How is the MPAA allowed to do that when a Target and Disney and everybody can just market to your kids about a sexualized lifestyle? It seems to me that they're breaking the law as far as the kid can't give consent.
That's right.
So how can you market him something that's sexual?
That's right. Here's a good point. And Jay, I don't know if we were done. I'm sorry, Jay, did I cut you off? Go ahead.
That's go for it.
Okay. And that brings up a good point. And this is back to the point that David was trying to make. These homosexual groups are saying we have nothing to do with transgender. They say, well, they're different than us. And they say we were just about love, not about sex. And I was going to be different than that because the whole movement is about sex. Yes. The whole movement is about sexuality. You can't say the movement is about love and art and those kinds of things. It was from the beginning, it was about that. I remember seeing, even before transgenderism became this thing, San Francisco with Harry Hay in the 60s and 70s, it was always about sexualization. Now, they didn't do it to kids that obvious and that blatant, but it was always there. And so I think in a lot of ways, David, this homosexual groups are saying we had nothing to do with this. They were the seminal influence, if I want to make it into those terms, to what we see today. It's inevitable. You can't open a Pandora's box that way and just say, well, it's only going to go this far. It is going to ravage society, as we see in Romans 1. It is going to ravage society. Once you begin down that road and God gives you over to these things, then it becomes a whole different ballgame. And we're seeing the consequences of these lifestyles being promoted, as Jacob talked about, these politicians promoting it. Now they want to distance themselves from it. How hypocritical is that? How hypocritical is that to say that it's not about, our relationship between this man and this man, it's not about sex. Well, then what is it about then? Right? It's so
but it is interesting, Margot, that they see something there within their own type of lifestyle that they see is actually bad, that they don't want to be associated with it, and okay, look, I see it, and I know how bad I believe the grooming and everything that's going on with the kids, and if they're seeing it, that should wake people up to say, hey, these guys even think this is bad. You know what I mean?
No, and there might be some hope for some of those. And Jacob, you and I know, and David, believers today that were, as First Corinthians tells us, that such were some of you. And they understand that life is never about being happy. It's not about love, and it's not about acceptance. It's really about, unfortunately, about getting ripped off and being brainwashed into things that you never thought you would get into. But it is interesting that there's a lot of groups that are going against what they're doing now. But I think people like you, I think Davey, you mentioned Disneyland and their stocks and that's been going down, but they keep doubling down. This is what the crazy thing about it. They double down. They don't back out. Look at Bud Light. They just keep donating to, LGBTQI plus groups. Look at Disney, the whole enterprise. They keep going. And we got the government flying gay flags on embassies, right? It is an onslaught. Now
it's a moral war of attrition.
Yeah.
And they are prepared for whatever casualties they need to take to reshape society to what they want.
Exactly. Great point. And that's actually, you literally quote the governor from Illinois, Spixter. That is his family's goal, is to reshape society in their image. And they will use, he's the, I think it's the Hilton. I think it's the Hilton. Hyatt. Yeah. So it is completely backed by billionaires. And Jacob, I guess my question is this: if you're a company and you had a choice between ESG and being funded with these great credit lines from, the IMF and all these other groups, or you have your customers who don't want what you're pushing, but you need the ESG score in order to get these, what do you do?
Unfortunately, many people who know what's wrong are going to compromise. And I'm sorry to say, in the case of Chick-fil-A, that has included Christians. They're going to compromise. Well, the time is going to come when Jesus made it clear where compromise will be impossible. You will either backslide or you will stay loyal to him and be willing to pay whatever price that requires, because your hope is in him and his return, not in this fallen world that's only going to get worse. That's essentially what it comes down to. It'll be impossible to sit on the fence and to compromise. Yes. Remember, Lot desperately tried to negotiate with the militant homosexuals. He tried, but they were implacable. They could not be satiated. You have to understand what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah is what the New Testament says in both Jude and in Peter is going to transpire at the close of the age. These people are implacable. There is no way you're ever going to be able to make peace with them. Some Christians will foolishly try due to their ignorance of the word of God, due to their trying to preserve their self-interest. But ultimately, of course, it will not work. You're going to have to make a choice. That is what it comes to. We have to keep our eyes on the Lord and his return. If anything other is focal to our perspective, we're heading in the wrong direction. And once you begin heading in the wrong direction, it's very difficult to reverse and come back to the right direction. That is to begin with. The other thing that was mentioned is the donations to these causes. What rights do these people not have? Now they're giving the right to indoctrinate children in schools. Why are you contributing to a charity that has no reason to exist? Why are you? Shouldn't that money be going to cancer research? Shouldn't that be going to something legitimate? Cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, motor neuron disease, with all of the deserving and needy charities. Why is money being thrown out the window to promote sin? Well, that just shows you the moral depravity of the society. They need. We're going to contribute as if it had the legitimacy of feed the children or something like this.
That's right.
Absolutely ludicrous hypocrisy. Absolutely ludicrous hypocrisy.
Marco, we see, I think, when I think about, there's an hour where merchant Babylon falls and they all mourn.
That's right.
They all mourn this. It's what's happening, I think, with this lending of money from BlackRock and Vanguard and all this. They're preferring the love of money.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Low credit. You get credit, plus you get it at a low rate. So
you get access to a lot of money. If you look at ESG, you get access to a lot of money, and if you don't support
low interest rates, so you can make more money.
Absolutely,
this is the sin of laudable money.
That's right.
They'll mourn. One day they will mourn quickly in an hour.
Very good. Quickly, yeah.
Cannot serve the Lord and mammon.
That's right.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add too, look, the boycotts are working. It has got them worried. It has got them scared. Otherwise, they wouldn't be referring to us who are boycotting as being terrorists.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
We're
That's
not
right.
being terrorists. We're just deciding where we want to spend our money.